Welcome into the Atlanta basketball party, your home for the best Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere, but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste, and alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Deshaun Tate. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150. If your bet wins, visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. The Atlanta basketball party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, technically, the All-Star break is the midpoint of the NBA season, but there are really only 27 games left for these Hawks. We'll talk about what it should look like for the Hawks down the stretch, and we'll also talk about the fact that middling, resulting, or words that have been used about who the Hawks are and are not. Well, the NBA has thoughts on exactly who the Hawks are. But first, let's talk about the Hawks and some commentary about their star and from their coach. Guys, our girl Jamila Johnson, who covers the Hawks and had the opportunity to attend All-Star Weekend, posted on Twitter or on X and said, quote, "I asked Trae Young about his name coming up in trade rumors recently. His response was, obviously, my mind is staying in Atlanta right now. Obviously, that's my mindset." Jarvis, what does Trae Young's response to the rumors really say about his status with the team, if anything?
To be honest with you, I think he says he doesn't really know. I mean, because to be honest, like when you talking about just going from like the trade rumors with the Lakers being hot and heavy on, on him, and talking about he's the number one target in the summer, and then of course all the trade rumors that we heard with Dejounte Murray, and there's not really being a good market or a good deal out there for the Hawks to pull the trigger on that part of it. So, if you can't get some return that you need in order to be good now and build for the future, which Landry Fields has consistently talked about, hey, why not listen to the Mark Stein report saying, hey, one of these guys will be traded? Yeah. So for me, when you're hearing all these things, you gotta think that regardless of whether or not you feel Trae Young should be traded or not, take that out the window. You got to start thinking, okay, we've seen this movie before.
Yes.
John Collins is a lesser player than Trae Young, hands down. That's not even worth a conversation. So for him to start finally getting some of these same type of rumors that we heard consistent until JC walked out of their door, you got to start thinking like, okay, yeah, I'm here right now. I can't think about that stuff. That's how I would have responded too. So, yeah, I think ultimately something needs to be done. I've said it, that a big trade is going to happen or a trade is going to happen. I'm not saying, I don't know if that's necessarily Trae Young, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. We talked about the consequences of that. So, yeah, I'm in a space where if you are answering these questions, it's more than smoke, T. It's more than smoke.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things, Deshaun, where obviously the question is going to continue to come up until something happens in the offseason. To me, it's a very general answer. It's a very safe answer, but I feel like there are some nuggets in there that might be telling. What do you think about his response to Jamila's question on his status with the team?
First of all, great job by Jamila, one of our girls that always does a fine job. And then I heard, Jarvis mentioned something about the LA Lakers. I feel like if they're so after everybody all the time, if they've got a jersey in the back that can fit Tenitra Batiste, then they're probably going to try and go after Tenitra too. Outside of that, when you say, where there's smoke, there's fire, I think there is. And I think one of the reasons of how you can kind of kill this narrative is you put a winning product out there on the basketball court, because a major reason behind why we're even having this conversation is because for the most part, with the exception of one postseason, this has been a Hawks team that has not been very good, met the expectation, let alone exceed the expectation. So you can kill that whole narrative with adding a number to the left side of the result column, which is something that they have not done a fine job at really doing. Outside of that, I think he's keeping the options open. I think that's always going to be his answer. I've mentioned multiple times, right, on our postcast, how I think that there was something to say about when the, talk had been about being a coach killer and all these different things. Nate was on his way out the door, and a lot of people here in Atlanta was kind of really pushing that narrative a little bit about, Trae Young not being, in a good fit for the Atlanta Hawks anymore and whatever else, what have you. On top of that, his style and the way that he plays the game is not really equating into victories for a lot of people. Empty calories is what they call it. Taking shots with 17 seconds still left on the shot clock. I think ultimately, because I think you'd be really hard pressed to find anybody who will say that they think Trae Young will remain in an Atlanta Hawk uniform for the remainder of his career. Yeah. None of us up here is probably going to say that that will be the case. Last thing I will say about it is that I think the only way that they can afford to keep somebody like a Trae Young around is A, by winning games to kill the narrative, and B, if things don't work out with him, you're either going to put this guy on the coaching staff in general or make him a head coach to keep Trae Young around, and that guy's name, fortunately or unfortunately, is Steve Nash.
Interesting thought. And I will tell you, for me, when I saw that response, I kind of thought of it this way. Like you said, the Lakers, they've been tied to so many players, you kind of lose count, but the connection points between LeBron James, Trae Young, and Clutch Sports do kind of raise an eyebrow for me. LeBron was one of two players who came out in support of Trae when he didn't make the All-Star team the first two times. The first pass, of course, was the vote. The second pass, of course, was the reserve. He made it for the injury replacement. So to me, that's very intriguing, because there's still some connection points there that could make sense. Also, in his response, he said, my mindset is staying in Atlanta right now. So he kind of put himself in the middle to say, hey, here's where I am today, but I'm understanding it's a business. And I also understand that at the end of the day, it's all about what is going to work 2-3 months from now. He doesn't know what it's going to look like after these 27 games, or if they do the play-in, or however the season ends for this Atlanta Hawks team. I think ultimately he knows and sees the writing on the wall that, to your point, Jarvis, this is now the Trae Young version of the John Collins saga. Maybe different reasons, but still, the Hawks also don't want to go through that again. If you're going to get something for Trae, you better do it now in all likelihood, because what you don't want to happen is for the John Collins situation where, yeah, you ended up getting yourself a little $25 million exception, but you could have gotten so much more if you had pulled the trigger at the appropriate time. I think Deshaun, you wanted to add something too? I'm sorry, Jarvis.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the last point I was going to make is this about time that we killed this narrative about, oh, well, this guy just bought a house in this market and this guy has a home. Listen, let me tell you something. There's a lot of guys in the NBA who have homes here in Atlanta, and none of them have any intentions on playing for the Atlanta Hawks. So I just want to kill people's ideas about when guys go and purchase homes in a particular market, that could be some sort of indication on the low, with eyes emojis, that we could potentially see them in another uniform. That doesn't mean a thing at all.
Yeah. And JD, I think you had something too.
No, I was just going to say that, like, to Deshaun's point, like there's always going to be little nuggets here and there that you can kind of pick up on, like mentioned with, Trae saying, hey, for now, like a lot of people are emphasizing that, right? But I think that he has to be that way, because that's how the Hawks have been. That's how Landry Fields has been. I'll never forget when, not as if it was a long time ago, after the post-trade deadline presser, he was specifically asked about building around certain players. He said, we value certain traits, and we're not going to necessarily build around one particular person. That was telling. Yeah. That was telling. That lets you know that, hey, that's why we're hearing these executives talking about, they probably could, they might trade Trae Young. Or they're going to be one or the other. Like both of these guys aren't going to be on this roster next year. Mm-hmm. That's why these executives, these things are coming out. This stuff isn't coming out of nowhere. Just like I said, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Indeed, because he could have been the one player. If you didn't mention any other players in that particular comment, he would have been the one that if you mentioned him, everybody would have been okay with it. Everyone would have understood it. But the fact that you didn't mention him was very troubling. And the fact that we keep looking at and getting returns from various interviews and articles and insiders that are there's just, like you said, there's too much smoke here. And I feel like it's at least a conversation. Now, will it actually come to fruition? Well, that depends, because the Hawks have yet to, in the last season or two, find viable trade partners with any trade opportunity that they've put out there, with the exception of finally getting rid of John Collins. So that's the other piece. Will that front office actually be able to pull it off? They may desire to send Trae to the Lakers or Spurs or whomever is the team that's the flavor of the day. But the question becomes, will you, Landry Fields and company, actually be able to put together a viable negotiate package, get to the negotiation table with something that actually works for another partner, or maybe two in case it has to be a three-way trade? When we come back, we're going to go into some comments that we heard earlier today about exactly what the head honcho thinks about this team, what that says about them, and what we think about what that says when we come back in the N1. This episode of our Atlanta basketball party is brought to you by FanDuel and brought to you by LinkedIn. Now, guys, you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. I don't know about you, but it's getting warm outside, so it's probably time to reset or refresh that wardrobe, or it might be time for you to get your ride right. That's why you might need an extra $150, and you can get it by going to FanDuel. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. The Hawks, of course, have a tilt with the Raptors on Friday. They return in that game from the All-Star break. Maybe you want to bet on whether or not they're going to win that game. Maybe you're going to want to bet on whether or not Trae Young keeps in line with his 27 points and 11 assists, what he's been averaging so far this season. Again, you can bet on your favorite players, or you can bet on actual teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. How do you do it? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Shoot your shot, because FanDuel is the official sports book partner of the NBA. And guys, we'd also like to tell you a little bit about LinkedIn Jobs. Now, let's think about this. The good thing is, the guys on this show, we actually like our jobs. Pretty darn cool what we get to do on a day-to-day basis, but there may be some opportunity for you. Maybe you're looking into making a move, or maybe you're a company that's looking for someone to make a move. If that's the case, then Locked On LinkedIn Talent Solutions is the way to go. Now, for small businesses, here's the thing. Hiring is very easy. In fact, 86% of small businesses think it's so easy that they use the product and they get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's because it's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And the process is easy, it's intuitive, and it's all about what 2.5 small businesses are doing to get their hiring process off the ground. So post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/lockedonnba. Again, that's LinkedIn.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So guys, let's talk a little bit about Quin Snyder. He interviewed earlier today on the Hawks flagship station, 92.9 The Game. And he was asked a little bit about this team and kind of going into what it'll look like in the final 27 of the season. He gave a very interesting answer, very interesting response. Let's play it right here. I want you guys to take a listen and then give your thoughts.
We have to share the ball. We have to move the ball. When I say connect, we think about offense. We have to be a connected team defensively in order for us to be average. Let's be honest. We have not shown the ability to get stops. That starts with the guy guarding the ball.
Wow. I think one of the things that you have to think about, like, that was just a real sobering comment, right? Because we know what we've seen. We've seen that. We've seen you guys talk about on the Hawks postcast after every game. Make sure you guys check it out, by the way. It's riveting stuff. I think that's the thing that I take from it, because most of the time you don't hear coaches be that forthcoming when it comes to the team that they are coaching, you know, in real time, you know, going
Emphasis
into
on in real time.
in real time. Like, so yeah, you don't, most of the time that you hear stuff like that at the end of the season when you got a chance to take everything in. But obviously he did a lot of self-scouting, you know, I think in this break. So for him to say something like that, it just kind of makes me feel better. I don't know if that's Atlanta sports fan in me, but it makes me feel better that, hey, he's willing to come out and say, yeah, I know you all have seen it. Like, we just haven't done it. And when it comes to consistently playing defense, and we talking about effort here. Like, we've heard this movie, we've seen this movie before.
Exactly. And Deshaun, it's interesting that Jarvis says that, because that's exactly what Quin Snyder said when the question was posed to him. Like, did you kind of go out on the island and kind of lock yourself in the bunker so you could reset to get ready for this final stretch of the season? And he was like, no. He said, I don't have to do all that. I know exactly who we are and where we are and what we need to do. And in addition to that snippet, he said, yeah, a lot of people think that it's all about the offense. And he said, there's something to that. But ultimately speaking, it comes down to defense. It comes down to committing, and it comes down to doing it every single possession. And he said, not that you're going to get it right every possession, but the E word that Jarvis just used. Quin Snyder said he wants that effort on every possession. And I really felt like that spoke to what most of us think about the makeup of this team, and even what it's going to take for them to be, as he said, quote, average.
I like how direct he was, and I think that is just another example as to how satisfying people have been with even the hiring of Quin Snyder, because that's what you expected, that's what you wanted, you know that's what you need. And realistically, especially in the sport of basketball, but I feel like when it comes to anything, in order to get to the pinnacle that everyone ultimately wants to reach, everything starts with defense. I mean, offense will always come later. There's that old saying all the time about offense sells tickets and defense wins championships and all those types of things, because defense and getting stops, you know, when it starts coming to the meat and potatoes or the nuts and bolts of the season, where we're talking about the postseason and the lights are shining the brightest, in order to be at your best, that is where it's going to have to start at. You know, the game is going to slow down. Possessions are going to start becoming more and more critical. There won't be as much transition offense, and it's going to come down to just buckling down and getting stops. And I think that he knows that that's where it starts at. And, you know, I commend him for how direct that he has been. You know, he start talking about, you know, obviously getting stops and things like that. I think it's great all across the board. I'm just ready to see it, if I'm just being honest. They're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Forget about the offense. That's great. But some people just believe that in order to win a basketball game, you have to put up more points than the other team. Well, while that's true, but how you put up more points than the other team is not just outscoring them, but you also have to prevent them from scoring more points than you. Not everything is going to come down to who has the ball in the last possession in the winding moments of a game. So I think that it's great. For right now, let's just call it what it is. I think it's a little lip service. Because I just still have to go out there and see it. All of this is going to mean nothing if I don't see it, but he's also not the guy that's out there on the floor. So I'm just looking forward to see how much better defensively that this team is going to be. And while I'm looking out for quite a few things from this team when they come back from the break, some of those other things I'm not looking forward to as much. There's few things, and the large majority of those few things is going to be able to prevent guys from putting the ball in the hoop.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, Jarvis, because when you do think of defense, you have to commit to it more, because your offense has tapered off so much, especially from the perimeter, while other teams are getting increasingly better and more effective from the perimeter. So when you look at this final stretch of the season and any hope that the Hawks might have of getting even in the play-in round at this point, or hosting a playing game or getting into the playoffs, you kind of have to break it down to players. And I ask you, when you look at it from the perspective of individuals and not just the collective, who's maybe one player where you're saying, hey, I really need to see a change or a shift in the approach, a shift in the mindset of that particular player, because I know if it happens, then that's the contribution the Hawks need down the stretch to get to the postseason?
Don't take my player, Jarvis.
Did you read my forehead? Like, did my forehead turn into two circles? You know what I'm saying? Oyeka Okongwu, you need to be a starter, sir. Like, that's where I'm at with it. Like, please, because if you go back to 2021, I know we reference it a lot, but I'm gonna be real quick. Think about Clint Capella's play that year and how the level of basketball IQ defensively, what he was doing for that defense as a whole, because we know what it was.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was bad.
Yes, it was.
And then it was bad. And we understand what it took for them to get as far as they did in the playoffs, in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then barring an injury from Trae, we probably could have went to the finals. And who knows what would happen if they would have got in the final dance, right? So I think his play has dropped off tremendously. I hate to put it like that, you know, and it's not just lip service. Like the guy isn't the player that he once was, and I think that Double O is trying to become that, and I think he needs to be given room to become that. Let us see whether or not he can be that guy going into next year, and potentially take this team to where they want to be, is to be respectable on defense. Like Quin was like I said, he was very honest. That man said just to be average. That just goes, I think that speaks to this roster, construction, right? That's Landry Field's fault, if you want to keep it funky. So I think, overall, I want to see Double O be that guy, be the starter, and let's work him in. We don't have to, come out and say, hey, he's the starter going for the next 27 games, but sprinkle that joint in, like, hey, Clint needs a rest tonight, and O gonna get the start, and we're just gonna roll like that.
Yeah, who's your player, Deshaun?
I'm glad you mentioned something about a guy that should be starting versus a guy that should be riding the pine. And Tenitra knows exactly where I'm going with this, because that player is not anyone other than the guy who has only played 67 games or less each and every single season that he's been in on this roster. And that is DeAndre Hunter. I don't know what's going on behind why Saddiq Bey is not in the starting lineup from a permanent standpoint, but if DeAndre Hunter hasn't gotten the memo and we're talking about general manager Deshaun Tate, then it's not even a question any longer at this point. We brought him in and moved up in the draft to, at number 4 to go and get this guy. And the major reason behind why is because of that defensive ability. 3-and-D came from Virginia, where they don't even play nothing but defense. All the wingspan, all the potential, all the length and the athleticism and all these other cute words that we can kind of throw around against the wall to see if it sticks. I'm going to start needing to see some of those things. I feel like sometimes they try to pity pat him on the back and try and do nice little, things to try and help bring him along slowly. Well, those days are over, and we're not asking for any of that anymore. I expect for you to stand in the gap and come bring it each and every single night, and if not nothing else on the defensive end. And I'm not sure that we've been seeing that, but I like him much better as a guy off the bench on both sides of the ball. And I think that's why we've been seeing it since his return.
And Jarvis, we have a term on our Locked On Hawks postcast, RRP. For me, it's the random role player. Usually that's the term Deshaun and I use for the guy on the other team, the opposing side, that smokes the heck out of the Hawks. But for me, any RRP who wants to come from that bench mob and do something in this 27 last games, I welcome it. I welcome it. Listen, we got couple more things, you guys. So hang tight, because there's some reaction that we have to a few stories that came out today. But you got to hang tight and wait for it on the other side when we go around the metro. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast, listen to me, that's what I do all day, every day, Locked On Hawks postcast, but it's actually the Atlanta basketball party, talking Hawks and talking eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, all of it. What brings home the winning trophy? That's what it brings home the winning trophy, and that's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. because with eBay Motors, it's all about burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, guys, we're going to go a little rapid fire here. We got the news today that AJ Griffin was assigned to the Skyhawks. He, of course, this season averaged 7 minutes in 18 games that he played, but of course, he's been down due to illness since January 30th, some illness that swept through the entire team. Now, other than the first half of his rookie season back in 2022, we really haven't seen a lot of AJ or really what he could do. So, Deshaun, I asked the question, and like I said, we're going to go rapid fire with these last couple questions. Does this move indicate the Hawks are looking to revitalize AJ's game like they did when they sent Jalen Johnson down to College Park? Or do you think this is a sign they're closer to moving on from him?
I don't know if it's really either one of those things, to be honest with you. It could be just a combination of both of those things. We just have finished having a conversation about guys who are a liability on defense. He's another one of those guys behind why we don't get the kind of production that we need out of him. I don't think nobody questions he can score the heck out of the basketball, but on the defensive side, I think is where he's a liability and they can't afford to put him on the floor.
Indeed. And what are your thoughts on him, Jarvis? Because this is one of those moves that all of us have been, it's a head scratcher. We never see him inserted into a game until it's trash minutes, usually in a losing effort. And now, out of nowhere, we finally get the word that he's being sent down to College Park.
I think he's finally ready to play basketball. I mean, because we've had some off the record conversations.
Yeah.
We just talking about just AJ Griffin, just concerned about the person, right? Just the person. Forget basketball. So I think right now he's probably ready to start hooping. And to be honest with you, like, good for him, because at the end of the day, it's all. I mean, I know people don't really care sometimes. I like to think that people do care a lot more about the person than. And that's just me because I'm an optimist, right? That's how I kind of look at that's my outlook on life. But I think for overall, this is good for him. And I don't think it's about his status going forward with the team. I think it just has to do with, hey, he's ready to play. He's ready to start hooping again.
I would agree. I think that the timing speaks volumes. Of course, the G League is on a break as well. They're going to go out on the road, and then they're going to come back next week, the end of next week, the beginning of the following week, to play home games. So, yeah, it is a perfect opportunity. We hope that it's the right opportunity for him where he can get a reset of the mental and the physical. And I can't tell you that there's a better coach than Ryan Schmidt, coach of the College Park Skyhawks, to get him there, because he does see the game holistically. So we're glad to hear that there's some movement on AJ, and hopefully it'll be for the better. Now, guys, there's still talk. We're like 4 days removed from that darn All-Star game, and it is still trending. It's like when you sit, when we always talk out our show ahead of time. And so when you sent that, all I did was shake my head, Jarvis, because I was like, JD, this is still a thing, isn't it? But it is, because we also got a couple of tweets out earlier that said the league, and there were pictures and everything, that said the league sent some of its luminaries like Julius Erving to the locker rooms to encourage
Larry Legend too,
Larry Bird, to say, hey man, play them games, like really get into it, be competitive. And you saw what happened. They didn't get the memo. They tapped right on out for what Larry Legend and Dr. J had to say. And it's like, literally at this point, and let me just say this quickly. I don't care. I'm in my Mike Tomlin. I do not care. But a lot of other people do. They say, oh God, they're stressed out, no defense, blah, blah, blah. So is there any hope for the NBA All-Star game? Or does anybody really care? Because the NBA is going to play this regardless.
I think for me, T, like, I think the way this All-Star game is being played, I really kind of feel like it speaks to the disconnect that some of these players have. I'm not going to say all. I'm not going to paint that broad of a brush.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, I got his name, I got his face in my head, and I can't think. Minnesota Timberwolves, power forward. He deems himself the best 3-point shooting power forward in the NBA.
Oh,
Karl Anthony Towns.
Karl Anthony Towns. Thank
Could
you.
you see? Could you see my eyes rolling?
Yeah.
Yes. Karl
But he
Anthony
did win a
Towns.
contest, man. Give him some credit.
Karl Anthony Towns was asked after the game about the defensive play. This
After he
man
dropped 56.
had the unmitigated gall to say, and I quote, yeah, it wasn't that people weren't playing defense. We're just blessed offensively in how we play the game. I was just like, oh, you talk about yourself because you dropped 50 points. Like, I'm like, dude, you have no self-awareness whatsoever. None. And that's the problem with a lot of these players in this NBA. Look, I keep on adding to the number. I said some. Now I'm saying most. A lot.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
The majority,
so yeah. And then it kind of culminates itself when you have legends like Dr. J and Larry Bird coming in there saying, and even Andre Iguodala, like a really good defensive player in his heyday, right? You know, and the catalyst for one of that first Warriors team. Them come in there and you just like, all right, whatever. Like, oh yeah, probably in the moment, yeah. Like, oh yeah. And then y'all go up there and score 200 points. Like, what? Yeah.
Right.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. Yeah, like I don't know what you're gonna do, Adam Silver, but you have work to do because there's actually the All-Star game itself is just one of the things that needs to be revamped to reset the ambiance and the legend and the legacy and the excitement around that entire weekend. Another thing that kind of dropped today that says, hey, there's clearly no excitement on the national level about the local team, and that's the Atlanta Hawks. They got dropped from 2 nationally televised games this day. They literally got dropped from their game with the Knicks, which, hey, you would think that's a rivalry game, but with the Knicks trending as up as they are and the Hawks kind of trending down, the league decided to drop that in favor of Celtics Cavs, understandably so. That's your 1-2 punch in the East. And then they also dropped Hawks Grizzlies for obvious reasons, no Ja Morant, and in favor of Wolves Cavs. So speaking of Cat and his team, they just won up the Hawks in that regard. But I think, Deshaun, quickly, that speaks volumes of what the league thinks about exactly what the play of the Hawks are at this point in the season as well.
Yeah, I'm actually okay with it, to be honest, because the way that this team had been playing prior to the last handful or two of games, I'm not sure that I want to nationally broadcast the product that's currently being put out there on the court, if I'm just being honest. So, I mean, I know it may not necessarily be the thing to say, but I'm actually okay with it. You know, I think they got some more work to do, obviously, before we can even have conversations about putting them on the national level. And hey, by the way, Jarvis, Tenitra, very, very quickly, the NBA Summer League is becoming a much bigger deal than the All-Star game. Just to
and
let you know.
rightfully so. Listen, we appreciate you guys pulling up. Definitely. And as always, check out not just our Atlanta basketball party, but we got a lot that you can check out. You know how you can find out? If you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So for the best Hawks talk and really for all the best sports talk in Atlanta, check us out. And don't forget to check us out tomorrow on the Atlanta Sports Party.